hey everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of Totally Amazing Mushrooms. They're still going strong and we're already into December. I can't believe it. Anyways, come for a walk with us, see what we can see.
Wow, what a beautiful day on the lake. There's not even a breath of wind, not a ripple. Fabulous. Sun's shining bright, as you can not see. Wow. So serene. Oh, and look. Somebody's found something to roll in. I can only imagine what it is. Here we go again. I thought I saw a little Suillus down here. This is actually the mat jack. This is the Suillus lakeii. Yeah. What a little beauty. Yeah, they don't get the slimy, really bad slimy, but they do have that beautiful yellow bolete Suillus surface. You see these kind of dark lines on these guys. Now the Suillus acidus or acidus, that one will have the little dimples all the way down the stipe. And yeah, they just form these little tiny marks. But you can see part of his veils left on the edge of the margin here. And quite beautiful. And this one's coming home with me because I have yet to try a lakeii. So awesome. Just gorgeous though. Oh, just growing underneath this rock. Cool. So to take a line out of Scandinavian folklore, it is of yellow color and is called the butter of witches. Hey, we've got some witches' butter. That's one of their common names. Now I believe our friends and family across the pond call it the orange jelly spot. But its taxonomic name is Dacromyces chrysospermus. And so that one was actually named way back in the 1870s. And that was by Moses Curtis and Miles, oh god, I had his name a minute ago. Oh, Berkeley. Yes, Moses and Miles, Miles and Moses. Which one is which? Nobody knows. So I'm just going to set up the tripod here, because I got a few things to tell you. Now, are they edible? Why, yes indeed they are, and as a matter of fact, they're one of the few that it's okay to eat raw. You could probably candy them. They're very, very gelatinous-y, you know, kind of bleh. But in Asia, they've been eating them for centuries. As a matter of fact, they believe it has the ability to improve respiration and circulation. So, but they are high in polysaccharides, and they're also immunoboosters. So those are some really, really good aspects to them. Now, there are some lookalikes. Kind of like, I'm trying to get the branch over. This one here. Now, what's the difference about these ones? They look pretty much identical. Well, there are some differences. Alright, so number one, the Dacromyces, these guys on the conifer there, they grow on conifers, and this is an alder branch. So that would tell us that being a hardwood, that this is on the branch is probably Tremella mesenterica. And now, here's a second difference. Okay, so the Dacromyces are a brown rot decayer. And what do you think these guys are? They're not. Believe it or not, these guys are a parasite. And these guys are parasitizing. I'm trying not to whack my camera here. These guys are parasitizing the Pantherina incarnata, I believe, is the crust fungus that it is attacking. You can kind of see those little tiny white bumps. I'm going to bring this in a little bit. I got to break a branch off of this thing because it's getting in the way of the camera. Okay, so he's growing on this crust fungus that you can see growing on this alder branch here. But there's like something like 62 different, species of Pantherina, so I just believe that this is the one that it, just as far as I know, the Tremella mesenterica parasitizes the Pantherina incarnata. But this guy is also called the yellow trembler, and it was described by Anders Retzius, yeah, in 1770-ish. And so yeah, he described it as Tremella mesenterica. So, and I think he was a Swedish mycologist. And then later it was confirmed in the early 1820s by our Autobot friend there, Elias Magnus Fries. And I think Jacob Stauffer in there somewhere along the way tried to call it Helvella at some point, but because he thought it was an Ascomycota, but he was quite incorrect. Oh, what'd you find, baby girl? She's jumping off a log over there. So you'd think that I'd yapped on long enough about these jellies, but that would also be incorrect, because there is another. Alright, so this one here looks almost identical, but it's more compact, it's way more solid, looks more like a little brain than anything. I believe, now don't quote me on this, but I believe it's Dacromyces ovisporus. Kind of like a little brain. But yeah, they're quite solid, way more than these guys. Now, these guys might be a little bit older, they're a little bit larger, so quite often they are. But yeah, they're very gross and snotty. This guy is not so snotty, and quite solid, like I say. Now, there is still yet another. However, I was unable to find it, and this particular one parasitizes the Sterium hirsutum. Now, I could not find an actual one being parasitized by the jelly, but the jelly that attacks this guy is Nematolea aurantia. I have never come across this one yet, and I will somewhere along the way. And that one's also got another name called the golden ear. Oh, and I also forgot about the one that parasitizes the hirsutum here can also completely envelop the entire cap-like structure for them. So quite often you're going to see them just very small, little spots. You'll see an orange blob on it and go, what is that? And you look closer and you're going to see a miniature one of these guys, or similar to. And but yes, they can eventually envelop the entire bracket. And there's also Guapiniopsis alpina, which is the little, looks like a little gumdrop. It's called, I believe it's called the poor man's gumdrop. And they just come up in these little knobs. Alright, so yeah, so we've got the Tremella mesenterica, and then we've got the Dacromyces chrysospermus, and the Dacromyces ovisporus. So yeah, you really cannot tell the difference. This one's a little oranger, but it's about, but these guys are a little bit faded, they're older, and they'll actually go almost like translucent-y kind of color. But alright. Speaking of little brains, my little brain kind of hurts, so we're going to move on. Look at this beast. Yeah, you normally hear a crunch when you pull these up, but the butt broke off. Sorry about that. You can see how close the gills are together. And it's got a cylindrical stipe, and it's not solid like the Matsutakis. And you can see it's swollen at the base, and that's where the vulva is, and then which is fused to that swollen bulb. And then it continues on like a taproot. Now this looks like an Amanita smithiana, which can look very much like a Tricoloma marillianum. Look at how much of that material is getting all over my hands. And here's what's left of the ring after all the rains and whatnot. And quite often there's veil material on the cap too, but that washes off easily. And if you do ingest one of these guys, you're going to get bad GI upset within at least 1 to 12 hours. And with probably about 6 days of stomach pain afterwards. So good times right there. But it was described in 1970-ish by Cornelius Bass. And he named it after the famous mycologist Alexander Smith, who actually originally did all the collecting about 30 years prior to that. Okay, we've got the rosy slime spike. This is Gomphidius subroseus, I believe. This very gelatinousy cap, and I mean gelatinousy. It's very like slug slime. And you can see that the stipe broke off, but they usually have a very yellow kind of base to their stipe. And this guy has quite decurrent gills, as you can see. And very slimy. It's like a slug slime on your fingers. Here's a little button. I'm going to leave him alone, but yeah, it's just really, really slimy. And these guys are gild boletes. And this one is also a parasite on the lakeii, which we now know are right here. This one likes the conifers, but loves the Doug firs. And she's all over Vancouver Island. And you can see that they've got decurrent gills, and they're kind of gray looking. And that's because their spores are really dark gray to almost black. Yeah, they're edible, but blah, you know, and you have to remove that slimy pellicle. So very cool, but this one's not going in the basket. So this is one of the parasitized helvellas, and you can see the kind of sclerotum here in the center. It's kind of got that white and marbly kind of look to it. So this is the parasitized version, the Cleitosobi, and these are the little fruit bodies. Look at how tiny they are. These are the Cleitosobi fruit bodies of the Cleitosobi sclerotoidea. Yeah, completely parasitic, and did their thing on this helvella. Now they're sporulating and doing their things. But yeah, just tiny little things. Just sweet. So easy to just walk by them. Hey, we have, look at this. We have a beautiful little Amanita pantherina, pantherinoides. So it's also known as the panther cap. And we've got another one right here, and not a beauty. So Morrill in 1912-ish called it the Amanita pantherina, but in 1979 along came Jenkins, and he gave it its own little variety, the pantherinoides. So that's where you get the Amanita pantherina, pantherinoides. So you can see that this guy has a vulva. And unlike the Smithiana, where the vulva is actually fused to the stipe, this one is actually loose and free-floating. As a matter of fact, you can see it better on this one, because if I can get these branches, I'm in a blackberry bush here, so it's like I'm getting blackberries all through my, but you can see the vulva on this thing here. Very well defined. This guy's starting to rot a little bit, but he's pretty much done. But yeah. And we also have a little button right here. See how easy that would be to be confused with a Lycoperdon? Just so easy. Now, I mean, once they burst out, they're quite a bit different, of course. Now, many tribes, shamans, or shamans, however you want to pronounce it, they used these and the Muscaria for their spiritual journeys. So, these ones, just like the Muscaria, also have the same compounds in them that that can give you hallucinations and sense of well-being, but also can be agitation and confusion comes along with it too. So that's because there's a couple of different compounds in it. One is ibotenic acid and the other is muscimol. Now, ibotenic acid in our body actually gets broken down into muscimol, but it depends on the amount of ibotenic acid we have in our body as to how much it can break down. If there's too much, it can't break it all down. So they did a bunch of testing, and in the Muscaria, their levels of ibotenic acid are very high, whereas their muscimol is quite a bit lower. And the absolute opposite for the pantherinas. So these guys are low in the ibotenic acid and high in the muscimol. So with the testing that they've done with the people that were quote-unquote poisoned by the Muscaria and these guys, they checked out all their symptoms and they took all their notes and all of that. And they found with the Muscaria poisonings, 75% of them had the agitation and the confusion. And out of the ones with the pantherina poisonings, it was less than a quarter. So with the higher amounts of ibotenic acid in the Muscaria, the red one, you know, the Mario cart mushroom, our body tries to break it all down, but it leaves quite a bit of ibotenic acid left over, which causes the agitation or anger and the dysphoria. Whereas these guys, most of the ibutenic acid gets broken down into the muscimol, which gets you the euphoria and sense of well-being. So that's pretty... Oh, and the other thing, actually, not only did they get the sense of well-being, they also had spiritual hallucinations. So I can see why the shamans would use these for their spiritual journeys. It makes total sense. But yeah, with the muscaria, I know some people eat them and whatnot, and they have to go through a process, but I'm not going to get into that process. But they are a beautiful little mushroom, and they can, they'll grow in sometimes clusters, sometimes you'll get them just singly, sometimes they'll even form a fairy ring. So pretty wild. And they'll leave a beautiful little ring, and you can see this one's already detaching here. And there's another thing is you can see that the pantherina, the little scabers on the top, just wipe right off. Okay, so ones like the apricota, they're usually, the Amanita apricota, they're usually kind of fused to the cap. Alright, my hands are full of blackberry thorns, so I want to get out of this little bush. Ooh, what's this guy? Oh. Oh, he's slimy. Oh, this is, I'll bet you anything, this is Gomphidius glutinosus. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, he's got the yellow base at the stipe. Gills are kind of turning kind of grayish because they've got like a black spore print. And you can see the gills are decurrent, they're going down the stipe. And it's got this grossness to it. Now, it might be the Gomphidius organensis, which is very similar, and but that one's called the insidious Gomphidius, so very bizarre. But you're going to find that they have this yellow base at their stipe there, the base of their stipe there, and I think I can get, there's the rest of it, and you can see the yellow in there. Yeah, these guys are edible, but not a lot of flavor, and you got to remove this cap. And if you're dealing with a mushroom that doesn't got a lot of flavor, and you got to do a bunch of work for it, not really worth it to me. I don't have a lot of information on these guys. Their spores are almost black, and even the stipe is slimy. Like, it's got this, I don't know if you, yeah, it's not showing up, but yeah, it's like really, really glutinous. And the glutinosis is the most common one in our neck of the woods. Here's another little thing about the Gomphidius, is quite often you're actually going to be seeing them growing alongside a Suillus. This is a little cereulescens here, and yeah, so beautiful little Suillus cereulescens. And what, 4 feet away is that Gomphidius. Oh, and the other thing is these guys are a guild bolete, so that's pretty cool. So that's why they are related to the Suillus, with the Suillus being in the Boletaceae family. So there we have it, folks. Look at these cool guys. Alright. These are one of the Cortinarius, and if we flip one over, I'm just going to pull one of these out here, you're going to see how brightly orange their gills are. I believe this is Cortinarius cinnamomius, and they get this kind of a bell-like shape when they get a little bit older, and they start out very kind of conical, and then they will eventually just kind of degrade, like this one here. He's just kind of fallen apart, and there's other ones here, but they look like this beautiful bell. Alright, so when these guys are really, really young, when they're just buttons, this guy is barely open, the inside, the gills, and all of the stipe up there is a brilliant yellow. And there's these little tiny filaments that go from the stipe to the edge, the margin here, and they call that a cortina. And they're so fragile, so fragile, that they break really, really quite easily. Now these are amazing for dyes. You can throw these and a bunch of them into a pot of boiling water, and if you got some wool that you want to kind of dye a browny, orangey kind of color, just throw it in there and it will instantly dye it, which is really, really cool. So these were thrown originally in the Agaricus genus by the father of Linnaean taxonomy, Carl Linnaeus. Hey-oh. Hey-oh. And that was back in 1753. And then in 1838, along came Elias Magnus Fries and threw it in the Cortinarius genus and gave it the name that it has today, Cortinarius cinnamomius. But it's gone through a few different names, but these guys are classified as inedible, and I believe most of the Cortinarius are. So don't be throwing these in your frying pan. And since these are not edible, there has not been a lot of lab testing on the benefits or nutrients that are in them. But eventually they will, because you don't have to actually eat the mushroom to get the benefits. They can do extracts to get stuff out of them. So, and there's going to be more of that coming down the pipe over the years too. So keep an eye out for that stuff. Yeah, I tried to find a young one and I searched for an hour, and like a little button to show you the Cortina, but I was unsuccessful, unfortunately, and this is the youngest I could find. Okay, so I've got one here, and unfortunately it's a little bit beyond the stage of having the Cortina. So the Cortina has broken. Those little filaments that go from the stipe to the margin are gone. However, you can see the yellow color of the gills, so it's just starting to sporulate, and it's going to soon show that kind of a rusty orange color in the gills. Just wanted to give you a little example of a younger one. I just wish I could find one with the Cortina still attached. Well, hey, we got some beautiful little corals here. Yeah, these little white guys growing all through here. They're just absolutely beautiful. Now there are several that look like these ones here, and I guess we'll have to go through them and figure out which one it is. So is it Romariopsis kunzii? Is it Clavulina cinerea? Is it Clavulina rugosa? Is it Clavulina cristata, or also coralloides? Well, let's go through a few parameters. Okay, so the Romariopsis kunzii is normally brilliant white, and they're smooth, and they don't have all these wrinkles. See how wrinkly these stipes are here? And also their tips are not crested like these guys, they're more blunt. So we'll knock that guy off the list. Is it Clavulina cinerea? Well, that one is darker and kind of grayish. So I think we can definitely knock that one off as well. Okay, well, how about Clavulina rugosa? Well, that one's beige, and this one's starting to turn beige, as they will over time as they age. But their branches are more fused, whereas these guys are all pretty free floating around. Okay, it's kind of like that. So that kind of leaves us with the crested coral. These guys have crests. The Clavulina cristata, also known as coralloides. So why coralloides? Well, funny you should ask that. Well, in 1790, old Theodore Holmsköld, he described it as Romaria cristata. But he did not realize that the king of taxonomy, Carl Linnaeus, had already named it Clavulina coralloides. And as the king always wins out in the battle of the brows, she stays in the Clavulina genus. So that's, and cristata is the most used synonym for it, but coralloides is actually the proper name. Now these guys will live under deciduous or coniferous, they don't really care. Sometimes they'll grow on the ground in moss and have an ectomycorrhizal relationship with the trees. Other times there'll be rotting wood under there, and they use their saprotrophic abilities to break down wood. So these guys are amazingly grow from all through the winter, October to March, which is just, you know, when everything else is gone, these guys are still here. And yes, they are edible. Now, some say that, oh, there's not enough of it there's not enough substance, and but others think they're excellent. And I don't mind them at all. I don't think they have a lot of flavor myself, but there are other reasons why we might want to put these in our food and have them as part of our diet. So first off, They've been eating them for centuries and using them in traditional medicines for their health benefits across the globe. So they're loaded with beta-glucans, which we've talked about those guys before. And they're just complex sugars, and they have immuno-boosting qualities to them. And they also have anti-inflammatory properties. Now these guys also have polysaccharides, they have triterpenoids and ergosterols. So polysaccharides are your anti-cancerous and anti-tumor. And then you've got your triterpenoids, which are anti-inflammatory, you've got your antioxidant properties, and hypoglycemic properties. Oh, and they're also anti-tumor properties. And then you've got the ergosterols, which under UV light, they get converted into vitamin D. Now there's one more piece of information on these guys, which is really, really, really neat. So they've also got one of the polysaccharides in them, is called alpha-parineric acid. Now here's the neat thing about this one, is this compound is not found in any other known fungus in the world. Okay, so you may ask, what does alpha-parineric acid and what does it do? Well, funny you should ask that as well. Alpha-parineric acid actually helps us transport fats and cholesterols in our bloodstream without them condensing on the sides of our arteries and veins. So they help with the transports of the fats and the cholesterols through our system, and without them clogging our arteries and causing problems. Now, in a perfect world, these guys would go through their little life cycles and all would be tickety-boo. But in a fungal world where all was harmonious and peaceful, there was a disturbance in the mycelial floor. And through that, enter Cruella de Vil. Wow, man. Here is a parasitized cristata. And the parasite on it is another fungus, and the parasite is called Helminthosphaeria clavariarum. Yeah, you can see it slowly takes over the actual fungal structure there. Starts from the base and works its way up. You can see the tips are still got their little beigey white colors. But yeah, pretty amazing. So yeah, another parasite on our fungal buddies out here. It seems every time I turn around, there's another fungal parasite that attacks other fungus. Well, I guess everything has to have a predator. Cruella de Vil, Cruella de Vil.
All right, everybody, that's it for another one. Thank you so very much for watching, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please hit the like and subscribe button. Until next time, my friends, take care now.